band in Washington State, so the whole study starts with what? Controversy. That's how it starts, and you see at the end it ends with controversy. So when you go home, take a good look at those scores. Now, we go through for a period of time here with the early American authors. You got to picture this. You've got Ashworth, and you have a succession of say, a dozen American noted authors on this side of the fence. You got what I affectionately call Sam the Three Camps Man over here. Now, believe it, as of today, nothing has changed over here. Steeped in British tradition, nothing's changed. Drummers throughout the British Commonwealth still play Sam Potter's version of the Mother and the Three Camps. And that hasn't changed. This study goes right up into the 1990s. American authors, here, change this part, do this, to fine. Not Sam. Everybody in the British Commonwealth. It's like a religion. The fifers and drummers in the British Commonwealth, you shall not change the note of Sam Potter's stuff. And that's the way it is. So we go there. So we go through different authors. And it's very, very interesting too. All I can tell you in studying the early American authors, I can't find anywhere, and we've covered 17 drum books, 4 CDs, this publication, I can't find 2 the same. And I'm going to be critical when I say it's a fact. If you can go through and find 2 of them the same, God bless you. Please send me an email so I get this thing corrected. So the propensity of the authors to begin to change. The roll mix is the most important thing that makes it change. Potter uses a roll mix of 5s, 10s, and 11s. Potter presents us with a problem. If you read the description, he says, the Mother and the Three Camps shall be beat through in ordinary time. And he refers to, okay, so it's simple time, he beat through in ordinary time by the order of His Majesty forces. Back in those days, that was 75 beats per minute, except in cases of celerity or special occasions, you can play it in the quick step tempo, which is 180. So here we got Sam the Three Camps Man from 75 to 108. And this, look at the notation. You won't figure it out. It'll take you an hour to subtract that notation. And over here you have Ashworth and these list of American authors. And we're just going to do. But the things we have to look for, and what you'll look for at home, what you'll find great, is 1, the roll mix. All the American authors, even up past Bruce and Emmett, and you move right up to the Moeller book, there was only 1 author that used 11-stroke rolls on the American side. And that was Howe, a book out of Boston, Massachusetts. And he only used 11-stroke rolls in the second half. And that was it. And where do you see Howe's notation? You know? So you got to wonder. So all of a sudden, as we go through, keep this picture in mind. You've got Ashworth, all these successive early American authors. And all of a sudden, you run into this guy called Gardner Stroud. And I'm sure you all know. So you've got here in the United States, Ashworth, and his work was generally accepted and sort of approved by the American military. You go through, you get Bruce and Emmett, same thing, approved by the American military. You go through and you get up to Stroud. Finally, the Secretary of the War Department of the United States approves it, the dates in here. So you've had 3 successive versions in the United States that have been approved by your military. Sam the Three Camps Man, you're just continuing on over here, nothing's changing. So what you've got to look for are the roll mixes and try to draw a conclusion of what did they mean. Did they mean to play the 10s or the 11s on the beat? Because that's what the score says. You can't get away from that, no matter what score you look at, on the beat. The roll mixes they used were somewhat different. There's some used 9-stroke rolls, some are using 7-stroke rolls. The long roll at the end, as you know, the join, all these things can vary from, in common time, in simple time, from 5 beats to 7 beats. But, so, all of this is part of the Ravelli, as we know. Keep in mind, internationally, the Ravelli is not the same as your American Ravelli. The Brits still use what they call the duty, and that is the drummer's call, the camp taps, followed by the mother in the 3 camps, and the slow scotch. In the United States of America, it was somewhat the same, except that the Americans have turned it into almost a 20-minute fife and drum concert. You took these things, then you added the Hessian, the Austrian, the Dutch, the this, and added it all together, and it became a wonderful, wonderful 20-minute concert. And we described that in there. But keep in mind, Ravelli around the world is not necessarily the same as the Brits play it or the Americans play it. I'm one of these guys, I'm sort of caught, I'm in Canada, I got caught in the middle, I play it all ways. So, and we'll get that at the last part of the study. But keep in mind that, for instance, the French, there's a quote in here, Rigaudin and Le Diane are the French military, Camp Wauvillac, okay? The French and the Napoleonic armies did not play the 3 camps. That's all. The 3 camps is the British Commonwealth, basically, and the United States of America. That's basically where you find the 3 camps. So keep in mind, internationally, if you read Dr. Berger's book, the 1930-some-odd publication, you'll find in the back a whole section called the Ravelli strokes. And that's where La Diane comes from, because it's the Swiss, the way their terminology is, and they describe that as a double drag figure. So you get those kinds of figures, okay? So we're just going to march through briefly the American authors, because I know you're not really interested in Sam, the 3 camps on that over there. You're interested in what you guys done. And it's a wonderful, wonderful history to read. It really is. These early authors, they made a significant contribution to rudimental drumming. They really did. And having read all of their books, all pages in all of their books, it's amazing. And it's amazing what they played in the early 1800s. But you can see how it gets massaged around. You have different centers of excellence. You have different instructors. You have different ways to notate. It's impacted by several wars. The Napoleonic Wars guided it in some way. You had your own War of Independence, your own Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the First World War, Second World War, all impacted in some way these things. But get this, and you got to keep that when you read this in the back of your mind. The British or the Americans, doesn't matter. We need some drummer boys. They had kids who were 9 or 10 years old serving in the British forces, and you had the same thing in the American forces here. Now, can you picture this little British drummer boy at 9 years old with his 14 by 12 rope drum, and some guy says, do you know the difference between an irregular roll and a roll played with 16th note pulses in common time or simple time? Some of these kids drummed for 8 years and never seen a note of music. They were taught by rote. They never seen it. Poetic words to describe it. Paradiddle, paradiddle, paradiddle. I used to like this one, and it's screwed up now. It was called a flamadiddle. You remember how simple that was? Flamadiddle, flamadiddle. Now what is it? A single flam paradiddle? How the hell do you say that? I don't know. It's, so anyway, we've used also a standard, okay? The first camp, 32 beats. The second camp, 32 beats. The third camp, 48 beats. And so all of these scores of the authors we've compared back to that model. Some of them fit, some of them don't fit, okay? Just accept that as a fact. But as you go through those scores, if there's anything you're going to look at, it's the rolls. The rolls, that's what it is. It's the interpretation of the rolls that make it different. So you've got all the American authors as we go through here, and it's a fascinating study. Please take time out to read it. If you want to go through this, you've heard your expression, and it's only here in the United States, the three camps and the points of war. A study of your authors indicates that the points of war for ceremonial purposes, etc., were traditionally the first camp. And then we discovered a guy called Lovering. And he said, no. The points of war is an imitation of a battle. And if you'd like to take a look at Lovering's score, I've taken it right out of the book, and you'll be able to see it there. And it's on page 10. And that's his version of what the points of war is, or what it is not, or whatever. Okay? Now, this publication is out of the American Eastern Seaboard, but if you look at it, he refers to cannon, small fire, etc., etc. So one thing that come out of this, at least for me personally, is a reevaluation of really what is the points of war. And I generally accepted it's probably the first camp for the most cases. But let's not argue. If anybody said, let's play the points of war, you ask them what version you want to play, and just play it with them, win both of them. So it's, anyway, you go on to the authors and coming through. You should look at Bruce and Emmett. And it's important to look at Bruce and Emmett. It's a very revered publication here in the United States, as you know. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. But if you look at Bruce and Emmett, take a look at the notation and tell me if you've ever seen the three camps played that way. The rules in there, okay, in some cases, if you look at the fight parts, are written with dotted 8 notes and 16th notes and so forth. The Scottish cut and stroke field, okay? Hal, out of the Boston area, same thing. And Hal's drum score is written, yes, with what? The three camps. Now, I don't think any of us ever played that version. Whether we ever will, I'm not sure. But it just shows you the diversity as we march through, okay? So keep in mind, Bruce and Emmett approved in a way by the American government. Ashworth approved, okay? And as you go through, you will find the notation absolutely fascinating. Look at Hal's notation on page 11. Just take a minute to look at it. Has anybody here ever played that version of the three camps? So you can see, and they're just examples of the difficulty that I personally at least encountered going through it. So we go from Hal, we go over to Bruce and Emmett on page 13. Now I want to tell you something, and this is not being critical. I can't find an American score, and all of this is properly notated. I could even take Sturts and tell you that in some bars there's 34 32nd notes in the bar. Burns Moore. I learned it when I was a kid, and I had some guy screaming the part in my ear. Okay, I had, until 2 years ago, never really, and I met Jay Burns Moore once. Never took the time to read the book, and I can show you notation errors all over the place. And it's a matter of the roll interpretation. And so keep that in mind when you go through it. When you find the mistakes, don't get annoyed. It's just the way it is, okay? Now, you get to Gardner's Screw. He's on page 15, 1869, okay? And this is the one that was adopted by the Army and the Militia of the United States on April the 17th, 1869. That is the official American version of the three camps. That's it. That's the last approved version, okay? All right, now take a look at the very first bar. Where's the 11-stroke roll start? On the beat. Every recording, every drummer I've ever played Stroob with starts that roll 1/16th note sooner. They play it in meter and in pulse with 16-note pulsation. That's one of the hang-ups, okay? Sturts, for instance, plays the 11